Hi, my name is Rob and welcome to part 2 of this very special Megaquarium vlog. So, let's recap what we're going to do in part 2. So in part 2 we are going to be animating the static model of a nurse shark we made in part 1. So we're going to do some rigging, animating using the take system and exporting. So let's just jump straight to Cinema 4D. Here's what we got, here where we got to at the end of the last video. We have a static version of our nurse shark. I think I skipped out one last step by accident, which is where you need to remove your symmetry and clap it down into a single mesh, and then make sure it's the mesh's anchor points at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 of the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to rig it now for animating, and all the animation is going to be driven by the rotation and position of bones, or joints as I think they call them in Cinema 4D. So we need to give this guy a skeleton. The first joint we're going to create, we're going to call the base. I think I've got joints turned off. Oops. Turn those on so we can see it, and that is going to live at the 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 of the world. And generally when I'm animating I don't touch the base bone, it's sort of the anchor which all the other bones are hung off. So we're going to start creating some bones to go down the tail of the shark. So tail 0, 1 and tail 0, 2. And drag out number 2. So 1 I'm going to have at the base because I want it to bend around this point. Tail 2 I want to bend around this point. There we go. Tail 3, which we want to bend around this point. And tail 4, can you guess? We want it to bend around this point. And so we will just continue down our shark, filling in the tail bones, and then we'll put some bones into its fins, so we can bend those, and one for its neck and one for its head, and finally one for its lower jaw. So once you have finished building your skeleton, you'll end up with something that looks like this. And here's the full skeleton. You can see all the tail bones that are coming off the tail bones, the fin bones or flipper bones, I don't know what the right word is. And then some for their lower flipper fin things. Spent entire 2 years making fish and I still don't know what all the different parts are called. And now we've got our skeleton, we need to bind our mesh to the skeleton. So if I move these bones at the moment, the mesh doesn't move because we haven't told which vertices to weight to which bones. So first of all, we select all the bones and we select our mesh, go to character, command, bind, and this puts on a weight tag and a skin deformer, I think that's what it's called, and you can see all the bones. That will now affect the mesh, and what it has done is it's done a best possible guess weighting for us, but generally it's never quite what we want. So we're going to go in and manually weight all the vertices to the right bones. So I'm going to go character weight tool and select my nurse shark, and you can see all the different colours are which vertices are weighted to which bones. And we want to just delete all that out. So we're going to go to the base bone and we are going to put our weight to 100 and weight every single vertex to our base. And that just removes everything that the computer just did for us. So let's go down the tail again. So we're going to start with tail 0. Tail 0 is this joint here. And what we want is that everything below around this point we want to bend with the bone. So every single vertex down the tail from that joint, we want to weight to that bone. And it's not going to stay weighted to that bone, but that's generally what we want to happen. Because what we're going to do is go down to the bone next down the tail, which is this one, and we want to do the same, but it's just one lower down. So everything lower from this joint, we want to weight to this bone. So when we weight it to this bone, what it's doing is removing the weight from the bone we just did. And we just work our way down the tail. So the next one is this bone, weighting it to the bones. And this way we get a nice clean weighting. Oh, I think we've missed one in there. See on this view. That's quite good seeing it from the side. And of course, all the bones, so when we start to move the bones or rotate them, all the vertices will rotate because the bones are all linked to each other. So if we wanted only the vertices to move from this point down, we select this bone, and if we want them to move from this bone down, we select this bone. We don't have to worry about the fins and stuff. We just, for now, because we'll go back and we'll we'll do all the extremities at the end. So if we wanted to do our right fin, which is this side, we just select the right fin, and we start colouring everything down the chain from that, and then we'll select the next one down, and we colour all those in. And of course we can weight the vertices around the joint at like a 50 or a different percentage between the two bones. So I'm going to do 50% on this lower bone and 50% on this upper bone, and this means that when we bend our lower bone, it only bends 50%. You can see that it's from its starting position, and if I rotate it down by 40 degrees, the joint is only rotated actually by 20 degrees, so we can get some softer movements, less harsh deforming. And so that's the general principle of weighting. So again, hopefully after some time and effort, you will end up with this, which is a fully rigged version of your animal, your fish, your shark, whatever you're planning to make. One thing I need to just mention about rigging before we move on to animating is about constraints and IKs. So there aren't any constraints or IKs on this system, but if you had something with legs and you wanted to make sure it walked nicely on the ground, then you'd probably want to put it on an IK system. The FBX importer does work, does understand those. It can be a little temperamental because it's not really understanding the IK. When we export to FBX, all the motion is baked down into the bones as position and rotation transformations. So after you've exported your FBX, the IK is sort of just forgotten about. It's all baked into the bones. And this can work great, but sometimes it's a little temperamental, and what you can do is just re-import your FBX back into Cinema 4D and then export again as an FBX. And this double baking means that sort of some of the bones where it hasn't bothered to record the rotation, sort of if the bone stays at 0 the entire time, it sometimes doesn't bake it down, it'll make sure that's all baked down. So if you're having a few problems with when you're using constraints and IKs, but when you open the FBX in Cinema 4D it looks fine, just try resaving it as a sort of first protocol. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is start animating. So now we have a fully rigged shark, we're ready to start animating. All the animation and all the movement is done using the takes system, which is a little tab over here. The take system is a way of having multiple iterations of the same project within the same project. So you have a main composition, a main setup, which is basically what we have here. And underneath that main setup, you have different takes. And each take is a record of the changes you have made to the main composition to create your different take. And so all our different takes are going to have different animations in different ways that we are moving the bones. I think a good way to get you help you understand. It's to show you the finished thing again. So we're going to jump right ahead, and here's our finished model still swimming away. And as you can see, under the takes, we have different motions. So we have mill, which is just a milling about. I'm going to turn the joints off so you can see animation better. So nurse sharks spend a lot of their time just sitting on the bottom of the sea, and so this is what it's doing here. It's just chilling out. We have a swim take. We have a dart, which is a kind of flick of the tail when it wants to do a quick movement. A feed, which is it's opening and closing its mouth. Not where you want to be with a shark. And we have a turn left, which is a quick turn to the left. It does do the fish in the game will do gradual turns during their swim cycle, but if they get stuck in the corner or something, they need to do a really large turn on the spot. Then we have a turn left, and we have a turn right. And so those are the basic takes, and some animals have do support specialised takes, but most fish, this is what you're going to use. These are the 6 basic movements. And so, as you can see under each take, we have here all this information, which is saying that these coordinates of the neck bone are animated. And so this is the record of all the changes that we've made to our main composition. So let's go back to our take setup, and I'll show you. Where is it? Take setup. We'll show you how you need to set up your take system before you can start animating. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select every single bone that is going to move. So I'm not selecting the end bones because they don't have any animation on them. Put on rotation recording, put on auto keyframing, and this is in our main composition, and just drop a keyframe on, and that's just locking down. That's the bind position. That's where the joints are all going to start from. That's where the animation is all going to the starting point. So once we've done that, we're then going to make a new take, and we're going to call it template. So this is the template take, which will then work off all our other takes from. So we need to now tell the take system that which bones or which attributes are going to change. And that means we're going to tell it that we are going to animate all those bones in the rotation. So we need to put on auto take, and then we need to go and animate each of our bones. And as you can see there, when I animated it, it jumped back to its start position, and that's because what it's done is it's gone, oh, you want to animate this, I'll record that under the takes, but it doesn't actually animate it yet. And so you have to go through and tell every bone, I wish to animate this. I'm not really sure why we have to do this, why we can't just start animating, but I found that this is a nice, simple way of working to make sure you don't end up with funny things like where you start animating and it's not recording it in the take system, it's just forgetting it. And so you suddenly realise that half the shark moves and half the shark doesn't move because it hasn't recorded it. And you can see all our joints, rotations are being told that we want them to animate. You'll get to length appearing as well. We don't want length to change, so we can delete those out. And so you need to go through and do that to every single bone. And once you have done that, we should end up with this. Let's put our texture back on, which is a record. Every single bone is ready to be animated is rotation. And of course, if you want to move the position, you need to do this for the position as well. So you need to go around and you need to move each bone and say, I want to move animate the position. So now that's all done, we are ready to start animating. So back to our takes. We are going to copy our template and we're going to call it swim, because we're going to do a swim animation first. We need to put on take over auto take, and we need to put on animate keyframes again. And then we can go back to our bones and we can start, and this time when we start to rotate them, they stay where we put them. So I've told that to set a new keyframe there at a rotation of 11. And if we go back to our main, you can see in our main composition or even our template, there is no rotation, but in our swim, it's remembered that we want to change the rotation. So I'm going to start bending our tails, and I'm going to just show you a very clunky swim animation. So we're going to animate all these tail bones into their left hand extreme. We want a really big flick on the tail. Then scrub our timeline to the halfway mark. And now we want to bend them all the other way. So, and bend them all into our opposite extreme. There we go. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. And so we now have a very weird half a movement. Of course, we want this to loop. So we're going to open up all these tail bones in our F curves and get it so we can see all. We're going to select all the start frames, holding down control, holding down the shift, drag that out and copy that to our last frame. So now we have a ping pong loop, or a complete loop where it's going backwards and forwards. But it's still not swimming, it's just wiggling its tail backwards and forwards. To get it to swim, we need to offset these motions so it's more like a wave travelling down the body of the shark. So we select all our keyframes and we want to repeat beforehand and we want to repeat after. I'm going to fold all those up. We're going to make sure we can only see one track at a time, and then we're going to select our tail and we're going to offset our tailbones. We're going to offset that by 3 frames, and then the next lot we're going to offset by 3 frames. So what I'm doing is I'm just removing the top bone from the list each time. And so what you can see is our animation for each bone as we move down. The body is being offset by 3 frames. That might have been 4. Actually, I'm going to do 4 for these last ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for the last one because it's sort of flicking. And there we get a much more, it's quite an extreme swim, but we get a much more realistic swimming motion. So we need to, of course, do things like animate the mouth and animate the flippers, or the dorsal fins. Maybe they're called dorsal fins. That sounds about right. Or maybe that's the dorsal fin. I'll ask Tim, he'll know. So that's our rough, clunky swim animation. But of course we don't want just a swim animation, we want several animations. So then we'd go back to our template where there is no animation. And we'd copy our template animation. And we'll kind of call this one feed. And then we can record a different set of animation into this take for the different motion. And so every movement needs to be a separate take, and there should be no movement in the main project. Those are the main things to remember. So if we're doing a feed, we need to grab the open mouth and go, hello Rob. Close that up on our first frame, and then open it on our later frame, and close it back up, or snap it back up. So I'm going to do it there. And there we have a very simple feeding animation and a very simple swimming animation. So once you have gone through and animated all your takes, you will hopefully end up with something that looks like this, which has a mill, a swim, a dart, a feed, and a turn left and a turn right. And now this is ready to export. So once you have your finished model all ready to export, so with all its different animation takes, it's mesh on 000, and you've deleted out all the guides and made it nice and clean. Exporting is pretty straightforward. You just go to File, Export, FBX, and we're going to call that Nurse Shark. Click Save, and basically just follow these settings. So you want it on the latest version of FBX, and you want to export it as a text file. You want the whole thing, not a selection. I'm not sure what global coordinates is, but you don't want it. Don't want cameras, don't want splines, don't want subdivided surfaces, got enough polys, don't need lights. Animation, yes, we want to record the animation and we want to bake all the motion down into every keyframe. We want normals, we want to know which way the polys are pointing. We want to triangulate our geometry. I model things in quads, our FBX importer works in triangles, because if you don't, it doesn't know which way to cut this quad. So triangulate geometry, textures and materials, yes, substances, yes, and that's it. You click OK and it goes through and it bakes all the frames. I'm going to revert to saved, because as you can see, it goes through the takes. It kind of sometimes may muck up your file if you then save it there. But that has saved our FBX here as a nurse shark. And so what we're going to do is bring that back. I'll open. We're going to open that back up just to have a look at it, to check it's all right. It doesn't really matter about these settings because we're not going to be opening it in Cinema 4D. We're going to be opening it in the game. First we're going to check. Look, it's there, triangulated all the geometry. Turn the texture quality up. Looks all okay. Just going to check the animations. Mill, swim, dart, feed, left and right. They all look great. And so that is all ready to go. That is our fully modelled and fully animated fish ready for a Megaquarium mod. So that's it. That's all you need. Is this FBX file and a copy of your texture. Just send those. Well, you don't have to, but I'm going to zip those up and send those over to Tim. And Tim is going to show you how he's going to use those to create the mod. So I hope this has been helpful to some of you budding modders. On screen now, I'm going to put a quick recap of all the different stages. I've of course talked about lots more than is written here, but here are the key specific things you need to know for creating your model for Megaquarium. And I think that is about it. I hope, like I say, this has been helpful. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.